Man, I am so grateful to be doing this worship service with y'all today, because when I read this story, the story I mentioned earlier about the Dragon Girl that's been connecting into this theme, I didn't know that I was non-binary when I read about this Buddha. That was when I discovered in that very moment that I identified as a dragon spiritually. I know this could seem really crazy, really bizarre, but that was when I knew I didn't feel like a girl or a boy. And I had this moment while sitting in front of an altar while chanting a sacred text, a Japanese text, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Brother. And what this chant means is I devote myself to the mystic law of the universe, which shows itself as cause and effect and manifests as sound, is what that means on some level. And that's how I received it. So I sat chanting this, reflecting on this story, and I realized that I myself resonated with this 8-year-old child who knew themselves to be a Buddha. And why this is important and how that is important for today was how I received my ministerial calling. That was how I knew that I was going to come into the Saha world and become a Buddha, aka a minister. Let me share it with you in this format. So the first time I read this story, I was pretty tripped up, like, the Dragon Girl transforming into a man? Like, seriously? Why couldn't she cause millions of people to be enlightened as a woman? Then I remembered that this text was written 2,000 years ago. The story is said to have been composed around the same time that some of the stories that Jesus were written, back when patriarchy was even worse than it is now, some would say. Interestingly, in one of the supposed secret sayings of Jesus back then, the Gospel of Thomas, there's this story where Jesus is quoted to have proposed a method of transformation as described in the Dragon Girl. Verse 114 in the Gospel of Thomas conveys a scene of the disciples, to include Mary Magdalene, gathered and talking with Jesus. It says that Simon Peter says to them, "Make Mary leave us, for females don't deserve life." Jesus responded saying, okay, guys. What the text, it says, quote, "Look, I will guide her to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven." End quote. It really says that in this Gospel of Thomas. I was led to this text when I experienced my ministerial calling, because I was wrestling with this idea, this notion of, no, you can only be one or the other. I grew up Christian. I needed something to tell me, because I was searching outside of myself to give permission to be. So I looked for something. I went to school, went to seminary, found this text that told me that somebody said that Jesus said, you know what, I'll help Mary become a man just so that she can fit in with everybody else and do the work that I have called her to do. That was important to me back then, because I was searching for this validation, for permission to be myself from something outside of myself. I don't know, does that resonate with anybody else? Even if you're not non-binary, searching outside of yourself for permission to be yourself, I don't know. I offer this as juxtaposition to highlight radical transformation for the purpose of salvation was not a crazy concept even back then. The notion of changing from female to male, or changing from the lowest position of that time to a more higher acceptable identity as a means of achieving one's destiny, was never far-fetched. To me, these stories of Mary Magdalene and the Dragon Girl had the authority to harness the power of metamorphosis, the power to be who their missions required them to be. They aligned themselves to be what the mystic law of the universe declares in that prayer, Namu Myoho, that you can align with the mystic law of the universe to be what each moment demands. That is what this prayer calls. That's what it does to activate this sacred jewel that some might call one's soul. In Buddhism, they often call it Buddha nature, that jewel inside one's spirit. Granted, in all of these stories that I've shared, the one that I most prefer is the Lotus Sutra. That became the sweet song that really crafted me as this person that I am today, that helped transform me from, some don't know this, that I was previously in the military when I received my call to ministry. I was not yet senior master sergeant, but on my way to making chief at the time, and some people would not have believed it, I was really young, making rank, a very stern, certain kind of military leader. And then I encountered this text, and it started to change me in these ways that I didn't know what it was doing until I accepted my call to ministry. And that was a way of giving myself permission to start to be who I am, because also some folks might know that the military kind of doesn't let you be yourself when you're in it. So getting out started to give me that room. If I had more time, I would share this chunk of story about all of the inner transformation, all of the reflection, all of the work I had to go through of looking at myself, and I will share one part of it. Feelings of self-hate, feelings of depression, feelings of not knowing who I was, all of this happening in this transformation, this wrestling inside of myself. Sometimes we talk about the story of the butterfly being in a cocoon. We talk about a lot of different forms of life that wrap themselves in cocoons. And I know sometimes we talk about that goo process, but maybe that happens. I know, shout out to Anna, a.k.a. Now, who has told the story of metamorphosis and becoming goo inside. And I've always thought of it as a wrestling, like maybe something where I didn't quite turn completely into goo. So if you think of something like that, maybe you can imagine what your own inner wrestle that doesn't break you all the way down. Maybe you're in an experience of that right now, cocooning yourself over this summer period. I know we're getting ready to transition. I'm getting ready to transition into a period of break where I am going to be cocooning myself and wrestling with, what does this ministry now call me to be? I was preparing to go back into the military at the end of this contract. I don't know if y'all remember, that was what I was doing. And I'll be doggone if y'all didn't just love me into wanting to stay. Leaving room for Spirit to work on me and to cause me to change. And so in this summer when I go, I'm going to be cocooning and doing and seeing what is going to blossom for the next church year. And I'm encouraging y'all, whatever that cocoon process might look like, maybe it's a staycation, maybe you're going away somewhere, maybe you're experiencing a birthday over the summer, and you're doing some inner reflective work. And my hope is that when you come back in what we call the new church year, even though the church never really closes, please be clear, it never really closes, but we consider the more official restart of the church year August, when the school starts back, August 15th or so, when we do the in-gathering ceremonies and all of that. So my invitation is, over this summer period, to engage in reflection in yourselves and knowing, how might you be being called to change, to transform? Maybe it's not as mystical as Dragon Girl, but maybe you do discover that inside yourself there's a dragon. or maybe you discover inside yourself. What other kind of creature might somebody identify with inside themselves that might help be a guide for how you're living your life now or into the future? Does anybody have any ideas? Spirit's calling, trying to tell us something, because my God knows, my spirit, my ancestors know that, like, if people in the room don't have an answer, they do. And so I won't press y'all but I want you to think about what might be inside of you calling to be transformed is the thing. Another part of that, in addition to, I want to make sure that I said what I said, I wrote what I said in the way that I wanted it to be. So as I close this talk, I also want to ask if there might be anything hindering you from your transformation. Do you have any hang-ups that may be getting in the way of your mission? Perhaps it is literal hang-ups like the telephone, like you trying to call and they just keep hanging up on you. I'm kidding. But sincerely, I do want you to ask, are there people? So in the story of the Dragon Girl, there was a whole congregation of people who were like, there's no way that this dragon, that this girl, that this impure being could actually do that. Are there any people that maybe you need to clear yourself from being around who aren't encouraging? Or maybe you need to be with the community of people who see you, who affirm you, who maybe don't just silently watch and believe, but actually joyously, how y'all have been doing with me, affirming me, telling me how much y'all love me throughout this journey, how much y'all believe in these messages that I have to say. Y'all really loved me into trusting my transformation, and I want this community to do the same thing for you. How? How can we do that? Think of that over this summer so that during this next church year, we can do that together.